go to my computer and make sure that uh, everything is coming through loud and clear real quick. Um, Unfortunately, this is the best I can do for now. My microphone on my laptop is horrid, so I'm not even going to attempt, because every time I do, people have a hard time hearing me. Okay, let me pull it up on my browser real quick. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, sounds good. What's up, Brian? Loud and clear. Awesome. Good deal. I don't expect us to get very many viewers tonight, but be that as it may, I'm sure there'll be people watch it retroactively. So with that, I'm going to start with my introduction. So in the past week, I had an increase of like 700% of views and an increase of 34% subscribers. And so I understand that late night on Tuesday night is not an ideal time for most people. Today was supposed to be my last day off, and I was supposed to go back to work tomorrow night, but yeah. So first off, let's for the new people that may or may not join or may not watch this, good evening or morning, whatever this video happens to find you. My real name is Brandon, but I go by Kentucky Rex. It is a nickname from work, T-Rex, and it was the name I applied to my channel. Channel history used to be attached to the Reformed Gamers, and I used to be the Dark Souls guy for the Reformed Gamers, which was a Christian-themed video game Facebook group and podcast. That's not really a thing anymore. I've been a lifelong gamer in terms of video games. I'm 34. Started with the original NES. And then when I was a kid, we had the Super Nintendo and all that. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I got into the tabletop pen and paper, tabletop role-playing games, and I loved it. I always had an interest in it. We didn't, excuse me, I should say I didn't know very many kids that played, if there were any at all in my school. This is around, okay, so late 90s, it would have been second edition. Going into the early to mid 2000s, I graduated in 2008. So by that time, it'd be third edition, right? And I simply didn't know any kids that played. It wasn't until I was an adult and working that I actually met people who played Dungeons and Dragons, but I still didn't actually play myself until a few years ago. Always had that interest, never really had the opportunity to get into it. Some special shout outs for the channel. I'll always plug my boy Retro DM Ray. If you want to watch some G-rated content and written by a Christian, go check him out. I also recommend the Dungeon Minister. He's also a favorite of mine. He gave me on this next guy. He gave me a shout out on a Legion of Myths stream about 2E. Bear the Gen X GM. He publicly said he enjoyed my content and stuff like that. I want to thank him and give him props for that. Go check out his channel. I like his stuff as well. And then, of course, Archeo Matt. Archeo Matt is, as of right now, smaller than I am. I don't get to say that a lot. But he puts out a lot of good materials, and I do recommend him. And in fact, one of his points is going to come up in the video tonight. That being said, I'm going to try to stay on topic. This is not going to be considered part of the the Fellowship of the Ring of Protection series, because that's more for general blathering about gaming, whereas this has an actual point. It has an actual goal in mind. So first things first, I think we should address the elephant in the room. It's no secret that in the past week, I had some interactions with Scott Garibay. Now, on my part, I like to believe that it was very amicable between me and Scott. I am aware that he made a response video after my response video to him. It was however, I didn't get to watch it before it was taken down. Whatever his reasons, those are his. So I'm not going to deal with the hearsay on that. Just like conjecture and ad hominem, I don't deal with hearsay. I've always despised hearsay. So whatever his reasons were are his. And so if he feels like he wants to respond again, I don't have any problem with responding to him. So he's going to get the benefit of the doubt as I normally give most people. And, he has his reasons. I want to thank Scott for the response. A lot of people thought it was strange of me to respond to him in the first place. For those of you not in the know, Scott does have kind of a reputation of being kind of a baiter, sort of, with discussions on TTRPGs. May or may not be fair. I can't speak to all of his content. I've seen some stuff, and I've been aware of him for a couple of years now. So, but a lot of people were confused, because my first hearing of him was on Legion of Myths channel with the whole Gary Gygax stuff, and people accuse Max of giving him a platform, and likewise, I had a few people kind of accuse me of giving him a platform, and I said, no, there's a key difference. Scott's channel is bigger than mine, so it's the other way around. So I think that's where a lot of my viewers and subscribers come from. I don't quite understand the entire YouTube algorithm thing, but whenever there's engagement of any kind, whether that's liking, sharing, commenting, it boosts views. And within a few days, that video got 300. And that's a very big increase for my little channel. Normally, my videos only get somewhere between 10 to 20 something. It increased more than 100-fold. I think YouTube analytics on my dashboard said it was like a 700% increase in viewership. And again, like 35% newer subscribers, subscription increases. So I want to thank Scott for that. Scott did actually, whether on purpose or not, help me that. Again, I've acknowledged his response video, but I didn't get to watch it. It was the 75th Daniel Boone Festival. Took my girls and my wife to it, and by the time we got home, I was tired. I was like, I'll watch it tomorrow. And by the time tomorrow came, it was already down. So I'm kind of thankful in a way, because I wanted to move on to something else. It was not my intent to talk about this. So my plans were to continue on with the dice bell curve that you find in the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. And I do plan on moving ahead to that on my next video. So I just decided to make this stream all about answering legit criticism and stuff like that tonight, explaining some things, trying to provide context and clarification on some things I've said in those last couple videos I did. So, hopefully this clears some air. Hopefully people give this the time and the patience. I'm going to try not to take too much of your time. I'm hoping this doesn't go past longer than an hour, but I'm blathering. But I also have kind of an outline up on my computer screen to kind of help me keep me on track. So the next section I want to get to, that's on my little outline. The compliments. So I've been getting a lot of love for the last week. Thank you. I appreciate it. Number one, my dialect. People confuse it with Southern, like Deep South. It's actually not. It's actually an Appalachian dialect and vernacular. And if you think mine is wild and out there, you should hear some of the other people. Like, I'm actually kind of putting a filter on a little bit right now, because I try to make sure that I only use words that people know what they mean. And I only, how should I put this? I try to be as clear and concise as I possibly can in my speech. So I do kind of edit myself a little bit. If I was to just kind of relax back, talk about boomer hunting and this, that, and everything else, and how airish it is outside, and I felt a little qualmish today, and and kind of ran into a feller that was a little bit touchous, you might not understand what I'm talking about. Even if I told you I had a big old bait of boomer meat on the plate, and them Bills was good, and had enough to probably fill a poke up, you probably wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I kind of dial it back a little bit. Even in my description, I threw in Wasper. Very common. I'm hope I'm not breaking up. I notice I've got some lag going on here, so I'm hope I'm not breaking up. But I noticed in my description that I put Wasper in there, and I did it on purpose because somebody pointed out they really love my dialect. So to clarify, it's not really Southern. It's Appalachian, and it's something that it's the same kind of dialect you'll see in West Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina. I mean, pretty much that whole mountain region, right? And people find it novel, especially considering the kind of hobby we have. The hobby, as we know it, in its contemporary form, was born from the Midwest. In Geneva, and Arneson came from Minnesota. So you hear a guy like me talking about games, you're probably not used to it. So yeah, I understand my dialect is kind of a novelty. I also dial it back. Also, technically, Kentucky is not considered part of the South, strictly speaking, and not in terms of the history. We were a border state during the Civil War, so we had people on both sides in our state during that particular conflict, and we are considered part of the Southeast United States. Part of it, anyway. My part is considered part of the Southeast because I'm in the Southeast portion. Where I live on the Cumberland Plateau of the Appalachians. And kind of right around Owensboro and in places like that, that's where you kind of get more Midwest. Like our state has a division of time zones. And so generally more west is an hour behind in central, and we're on eastern. And if you go up more north to places like Lexington and Frankfort and Louisville, which is how you properly pronounce Louisville, by the way, they're more Midwest, and the land is a lot flatter. It's actually kind of interesting to see the change in geography as you travel the state a little bit. It's kind of like people say heartland a lot. It kind of is. You start seeing the gradual change in the terrain. It's interesting. People like my takes. Again, I try not to present myself as somebody as authority. I give my takes, I give my opinions, I give my beliefs, but I try to package them as a rational thought as I can. And my stuff is never really meant to be taken as advice, more like blogging. And if it's advice to anybody, Asbury U alum here, Wilmore, Kentucky. Hey, what's up, Bill? But my takes are generally speaking more meant for, if anybody takes them as advice at all, it's probably more the newer people coming in. Some people think you have to be in for several years to really give advice. I don't necessarily subscribe to that belief because at the end of the day, we are talking about a game. How complicated it could be. But I am one of those people that believes that even though you shouldn't have that much annual time, your time at the table should matter though. So if you're constantly going on hiatus, like a lot of these social media influencers are that go on hiatus because the game is too stressful, that kind of hurts your points a lot in my eyes, because who are you to give anybody advice when you can't even hold yourself to it? But anyway, I'm ranting now. So anyways, what was the goal of my channel? Okay, so the goal of my channel, like I said, this channel had, if you check out my other videos, my channel always had kind of an identity crisis. Like I said, it started as the Dark Souls playthrough channel for the Reformed Gamers, a Christian Facebook group and podcast. And as some of the politics and eventually the podcast and everything else kind of fell through, I was left without really a niche anymore. And I found myself in a sea of Dark Souls content, which was a market oversaturated at the time. I had to find something else. Get me a drink of water here. So I had to find something else. So I moved on to theology and philosophy, talk about that, but it didn't get me a lot of views. So I talked about like Stoicism and like Calvinism and stuff like that. Because I'm a Calvinist and I'm a Stoic. And my channel name at that time, it started off as Papa Rex, and then it went to, because I already had the T Rex nickname from work. Then it went to the Stoic Reformed Rex. It's kind of a mouthful of a name. And then when that didn't work out, it just kind of sat there for a while. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do until I started getting into tabletop role playing. And I just uploaded a video on my first ever homebrew dungeon, which was the Mansion of the Forsaken Necromancer. I got to give credit to Fred Daniel. He was a dude that was there from the beginning. Okay, he really loved it. It was kind of an encouragement to continue on with these kind of subjects, and so I stuck around. And at that point, I think I had already changed my channel name to Kentucky Rex. But the goal of the channel now is more to bring to light some of the older and forgotten rules of the games that used to exist. Like I remember a couple months ago, I learned about, because I don't watch him, and I'm not doing it to throw smoke or nothing like that, or anything like that. But like Matt Colville released a book called Strongholds and Followers, I think, and it's a $30 book for 5e, and it's really just a book about retainers and Dominion play. And I think to myself, that's kind of ingenious in a way, because he's making money off of it. He raised a lot of money off of it, and I thought to myself, I'm in the wrong line of business. But it was funny to me because those rules already existed in the older games, and had people known that. Now, I think people only bought the book because it was Matt Colville. That's the only reason I think anybody even bought the book. Do I think 5e players are actually using it? No, I don't. But I may be wrong, but I don't believe that. That kind of Dominion play kind of comes from like the roots in wargaming. And I'll get to some of that stuff in a little bit. So I'm going to move on to the next part of my outline, because I'm trying not to rant. I'm trying not to ramble. I don't want to waste your time. I want to keep this digestible as a stream, and hopefully people will watch it and whatnot. Complaints and clarifications. I was alleged of not liking other people having fun. This is not true. Nowhere in that video will you hear me say something like you're not allowed to have fun, or your version of fun is wrong. I never once say that. That's actually a straw man, and that's not really a good argument. The reason for the video is because my GM burnout hypothesis. So I do acknowledge I can be wrong on this subject, by the way. But my hypothesis on GM burnout happening is because of the stress on having a written script for everything, like every contingency in your setting, and the modern disdain for wandering/random encounter tables. People think that you have to plan everything out, even to the encounters you have in the wilderness, when really all you need to do is roll some dice on a table. That's all you have to do. So this over preparation. So like the video coming out right around the time as my, not too long after my GM burnout video, I touched on it a little bit. And by the way, the video I purposefully made to be 10 minutes, because legit criticism I've gotten in the past has been that a lot of my pre-recorded stuff goes on for too long. Try cutting it down to like somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes so that it's more easily digestible, you get more views. And so I'm trying to do that. I'm failing, but I'm trying. That one video I did pretty good on. As such, I didn't really get to touch on all the points I wanted to, but that's because I'm sitting in my car. It's after work. I'm tired, but I have a general idea of what I want to talk about, and so I'm recording myself. Not to excuse anything, just to give context, by the way. So the video did take several takes. The recordings did, and by that time, I'd already made the decision to just release it with all flaws intact, because I do acknowledge, like I just threw out something like the Aarakocras and the Goliaths and meta humor and stuff like that, without really going into an in-depth explanation on that. And I may talk about those again shortly, at least touch on them tonight, and then just kind of move on. But and probably talk about them more in depth in a future video. Yes, those were the weakest parts of my video, and I will own that. So those criticisms are legitimate. Those were the weakest, less developed parts of my video. I'm just giving context. I was trying to keep it around 10 minutes, and hopefully everything was going to be good. By the way, I want to thank you guys for watching tonight. I understand that 9 o'clock on a Tuesday evening is not ideal. I just happen to be off tonight. I'm going to be off for a little while longer. Turned out I got a phone call today that we're laying off, so which is cool. I have plans, so I'm not worried. But anyways, so it's not about people, like whatever you have fun with at your table, that's what you have fun with. I'll get to the point of me even like harping on railroads in a little while. Moving on to the next point, somebody also said that they did not understand the viewpoint of running rules as written. Now let me explain. My viewpoint is that a referee, dungeon master, game master, whichever term you wish to use, you can run rules as written and rule zero. There is no dichotomy there. You can run either or, you can run both. It doesn't have to be this dichotomy. My personal opinion, if you run rule zero, you should do so that adds nuance to your game and the existing game rules that you have already established, not taking away from them to replace them with something that you think is cooler. Because like something kind of, because I've done that before. I think everybody has. Like you do that and then something falls apart and like it makes no in-universe sense. Like it's very hard. It's very situational for me to explain that. But I think everybody's stumbled and fumbled and bumbled their way through rules like that before. So my viewpoint is that rules as written, from here on out, going to be referred to as raw. They exist for clarity in game mechanics and to avoid favoritism at the table. Now, what do I mean by clarity? Because some of the rule sets that we run, myself included, we run but rules where like spell descriptions are purposely vague and this, that, and everything else. Well, the vagueness does kind of add a little bit of a base work to what you can work off of. And then you can take like pencil and paper and just write down how you're going to rule it. And then that's the law for how it's going to run. Now you can, and here's the thing. I'm not advocating for a lack of communication between GMs and players. That's not what Brian here that's in the chat right now, and he's listening right now. He can attest to the fact that we sit there and we will discuss rules. We can discuss rulings. We do it outside of the gameplay session. You know, I've said several times, because he's one of my players and he's also run our group through a Bake Me game himself, through the Duchy of Karamikos. He can attest and verify that what we do is we sit down and we'll okay, here's how we ruled it. Is everybody okay with this? Or, hey, I didn't know how to run this tonight. I'm going to check the rules later. If they're consistent, we'll keep it this way. If they're not, we'll go with what is written in the actual rule set. And that's the way we do it. So, you know, this is not an excuse for a lack of communication at the table. That's not what I'm advocating for at all. If you do that, your game group is going to fail very fast. It's going to die. You know, because believe it or not, this is as much as this hobby is made up of antisocial nerds, this is a very social game. So it's funny like that, right? So, but anyways, the way that I think of Raw is as in-universe laws, just like how we take for granted that gravity and time and light exist. It's kind of like that. It adds a level of verisimilitude so that the world is believable and consistent. Like if gravity was suddenly turned off and it wasn't through magical means, like that would be a very impactful way of life. Like that would that would impact us in such a way that our entire way of life would change if we even continued living at all. We'd float up into space and die. But you know, the rules as written adds a level of verisimilitude as universe laws in which the PCs can take things for matter of fact. Hello, Scott. Thank you for joining the stream. So that's the way that I view Raw. You're welcome to disagree with that viewpoint as much as you want. But that's how I view Raw. Like it's not necessarily like this whole board gamey, like you have to sit there, you know. That's not what it's about. That's not what I'm advocating for. A level of consistency within your universe. If that's not the way that it came out in that video, I apologize. I'll take that criticism and I'll take it on the chin, like a man should. What was the next point? Let me get back to my outline because my computer decided to freak out a bit. Okay, so the only thing I really have a problem with is kind of like the hand waving nature of an approach to rules. If rules are homebrewed, then they should also be held to in the same kind of consistency that you would for published rules. So like if you have your own homebrewed system, your own homebrewed rules, you should make that the laws of your universe too. Now, like, of course, like with all things, communicate with your players. If they're not cool with something, talk it out. Come up with something that's going to work and keep the gameplay going. Again, this is not an excuse for a lack of communication between GM and player. GM has a huge responsibility, and the players are going to be the ones that really suffer for it at the end, right? So don't be afraid to discuss anything with your players. So, but like, just as rules or guidelines, they were also never meant to be something that would just a vague, it doesn't matter, hand wavy kind of approach, you know, if that makes sense. And at the end of the day, this is all about escapism and having fun, right? Like nothing more. Like to apply a responsibility to the game any more than just escapism and having fun with your friends actually is being quite unfair to the game. It goes outside the scope of, I'm sorry, I got a message. Okay, it's not important. It's just somebody sending spam. Anyway, we'll have to talk to my wife about not saying that stuff. Anyways, it'd be unfair. It's kind of like a video game, right? Not strictly like a video game. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like any kind of medium of entertainment is supposed to engage your imagination and provide a form of escapism, if only for a few hours, right? Or however long you run your games. That's up to you. I've run 2-hour sessions. I've run 4 hours. I've played in 6 hours. So I've never actually run a 6-hour game myself. I kind of don't have that endurance, but you know, we just go with whatever works and whatever we have time for, and we try to maintain like immersion, and we try to maintain that this is all about fun. You know, I've run TPKs before, so like I do try to, believe it or not, I do try to balance more than what a lot of people think I would, because at the end of the day, a TPK is no fun. I don't want to see you sit there and re-roll a new character. So, but you know, death is always on the table. I just try to make sure that the obstacle is surpassable and rewarding, but still challenging. So I'm kind of getting off topic a little bit. Let me go back to my outline because I kind of went off on an improvisational tangent. I think that covers it. Oh yes, somebody left me. Okay, I'm going to feel real bad, and if this person is watching, I want to make sure that they realize I don't mean this out of any kind of meanness. I don't mean it to be qualmish or nothing like that. Okay, I don't mean this in any kind of ill will, and I don't mean this because I'm like mad at them and feel like I need to tear into them. I mean this from a level of respect, and I mean this from a level of I understand why they did it, but they need to understand why I'm not going to cover this tonight. Somebody left me a comment that they messaged me and said that they could not get to fit into YouTube because it exceeded the character limits. They provided me context that they spent 4 hours on it, and that it was they sent a PDF, and it's a 23,000 word document. Okay, look, I understand wanting to make sure that your viewpoint is out there and like you get your viewpoint heard, but I'm going to quote Mark Twain here: eschew surplusage. What that means is, and I'm guilty of this as well, try to make your point in as few words as possible. Excuse me. As the book of Proverbs said, a fool is known by the multitude of his words. So try to make your point in as few words as possible. Cut to the chase, this, that, and everything else. This is a YouTube video. And we're talking about role-playing games that at the end of the day, I'm more than likely, with the exception of Brian in the comments, I'm more than likely not running your game. And I'm more than likely not playing in your game either. You don't have to take anything that I say at any kind of value at all. Like, you can disregard this video altogether and not even care. It wouldn't really bother me anyway because, I don't get my income from this. I do it because I think it's fun. I want to make sure that this person knows I'm not trying to be mean. 23,000 words is a lot of time to dedicate to trying to respond to a YouTube video. I will try to I will promise them this. I will try to pick through it and pick up the points that I think are legit to talk about. But at the same time, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and up until I got laid off today, I was a factory mechanic. So I got a lot more time on my hands now, but I don't have that much time on my hands. So, and for anybody worried, don't worry about me. I'm going to go to the office tomorrow, start filling out paper, because I qualify for displaced workers benefits, and I'm also going to try to see if the state will help pay for CDL classes, because I'm going to go that route. That's the risk you run in industrial business, industrial work. I've been an industrial worker for the last. Okay, I'm 34 now. I started when I was 22, 23. So about 11, 12 years. So don't worry about me at all. But that's just the risk you run on that kind of field. Especially right now with the strikes happening in Michigan, which I believe have. Okay, this ain't about that. Never mind. Let's just say I think they have legit complaints. Okay, and that's all. I'll leave it there. So, anyways, 23,000 words. I don't have that much time to really go into that subject. It's not like I don't care. It's more like it's just too much to expect for someone to sit down and read, an essay and try to respond to it in one YouTube video when other people had other comments that were much shorter and much more digestible for me to respond to. Again, if that person is watching this, because I think they might be, I want to make sure that I don't mean this out of any kind of meanness. J. Scott Garibay, sorry you were laid off. Praying for you. Hey, I appreciate it, man. I do appreciate it. I know that a lot of my listeners are not religious or Christians at all. It's fine. I am. Okay. And I might use the occasional rough word every now and then. I try not to. Like Retro DM Ray says, words have meaning, and I've gotten better at that point. It happens. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I am on the callback list for whenever they call people back. Is the tumultuous situation up in Michigan. But again, I hope that person doesn't take this personal. I hope they don't take this as an attack. I'm not saying that your viewpoints are not legit. I'm just saying, 23,000 words, you should probably cut it down a little, So, some guys wanted to add something to this subject. And so I'm going to get to we'll consider this part of the appendices. for this video. I mentioned Archaeomat earlier tonight. He's a smaller channel than I am, and I don't get to say that a lot. And I like the stuff that he does have so far. So Archaeomat, if you are watching this, shout out. And if you are watching this and want to check him out, you go check him out. You go give him some love. Here's what he said, and I'm going to quote his because his references a lot of sources, and I want to make sure I get the sources in. So Archaeomat says, I know there's a quote from Gary out there where he mentions that after D&D was published in 1974, he pretty much stopped using miniatures himself. For one such example, see his Q&A with Gary Gygax thread on the EN World Forum, which is a site that I usually actually consult myself. In particular, post number 5585 on page 280. There's plenty of quotes of Gary saying that the miniature wargamers originally weren't buying D&D. That's true. But the game always had a direct connection to wargaming rules, and original D&D was notoriously idiosyncratic. Yeah, I think we can all agree to that. Lots of Gary quotes for that, too. No matter what he did at his own table, Gary wrote and published the Swords and Spells rules in 1976 and continued to reference the Chainmail and Dragon magazine and elsewhere. Some good starting points on the way the game evolved from true wargaming roots, moved to wargaming friendly in original D&D, and wound up using miniatures primarily as set pieces afterwards. View the telescope wondering which end is which in Dragon magazine number 11 starting on page 5, which is a source I have not checked out yet. Role-playing, realism versus game logic, spell points, Vanity Press, rip-offs in Dragon magazine number 16, starting on page 15. D&D, AD&D, and Gaming in Dragon magazine number 26, starting on page 28. The Dungeon Master's Guide developer notes, and a few words from the author in Dragon magazine number 28, starting on page 4. There may, and I have my first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's not in here, and I don't want to put aside this stream for the moment. But I did verify that one, and I verified the EN World one, which for those of you not in the know, EN World was where Gygax. That was actually where Gygax was most active towards the end of his life in terms of his use on the internet, I suppose. A lot of thoughts that kind of get a lot of his stuff that kind of gets buried up in there. And actually, I went there for checking out the Gary's House Rules stuff, and I want to do a video on that because I feel that when people kind of said that Luke Gygax said that it was total bunk, and Professor Dungeon Master caught a lot of criticism, which in my opinion was a little bit unfair. Like, the sources I've looked at in combing through all that stuff leads me to believe that Gary might have actually used those rules. But I'll save that for another time because I want to do that in a video to show that I really at this point can't prove that that's what Gary did, but it's not out of the question. Let's put it that way. And we'll get to that later in another video. So anyways, to continue on with Archaeomat's quotes, there may well have been any number of local groups still using old rules to run large-scale miniature battles, but I don't think there's any way to view BX or AD&D as either strategic or tactical wargames without radically redefining what those things are. Fair. Yeah, way too much to expect. Launched from, not evolved. Okay. I must have missed something in the. I'm not sure what those were comments to. I'm sorry, guys. I just now caught your comments. But anyways, I don't think there's any way to view BX or AD&D as either strategic or tactical wargames without radically redefining what those things are. Fair. That's a fair criticism. I was also playing games like Starfleet Battles back then, which definitely was a tactical war game, which could be used as a strategic campaign war game. So, yeah, I agree with that. So here's my clarification on that. So I'm not saying that D&D should become like Chainmail again. I'm not saying that if you're not planning on going to Dominion play in your game that you're not running real D&D. I'm not saying that at all. Okay, that's not what I'm advocating for. If that's where you want to go, good. If you don't want to do that, that's fine too. After all, for example, we see with like BECME and AD&D, the options after level 10 and 12 to keep playing, obviously it wasn't the total end game. It was just always an option, So I'm also not saying that you must own minis to play in D&D. That's not what I'm saying at all. I've run Theater of the Mind, and I understand miniatures and stuff like that is a very lucrative part of the hobby. I got some cheap ones that me and my daughter have started painting, just as kind of a thing. Like whether or not I'll actually use them, I don't know. It's just kind of she discovered that what she calls the crafting part of the hobby, and she's like, I want to get into that. I'm like, okay. So I bought some cheap minis and some cheap paint, and we're just having a fun time just painting minis. So I'm not arguing that you have to have minis, and I'm not arguing that you have to play Theater of the Mind either. I've done both, and I've often run both in one single session. Hello, Mo Lester. So I'm not saying that you have to run either or like if you're not playing this way, you're not playing right, or if you're playing that way, you're not playing right. I'm not advocating for that at all. So what I'm saying is that with the wargaming history, that's where you see like the overland travel. That's where you see. I did. Yeah, Mo Lester. Yeah. That's where you get your overland, your sea travel, and you could argue that that's where dungeon delving kind of come from. You could argue that, not necessarily that that's where it came from. Just that's kind of where you could argue that it has its origins there. So, the idea of what are you doing in this space that you're currently occupying? What do you see? What do you do? And the options to become a baron or a cult or religious leader or a guild master, these are player options that have kind of disappeared from us. And in my opinion, should be brought back, right? Should be brought back to at least as options. Not as like a mandatory thing, but as options, right? Wouldn't you like to become a baron in your game? Wouldn't you like to become a guild master? And if you don't, that's fine too. Like give them the option to keep playing past that level and continue adventuring, because, for a lot of people that meant that you retired as an adventurer, and that's understandable, So, I mean, because after all, if you become a baron and you're living the cushy life, why would you keep adventuring? But, you also had like, what was it called? The Test of the Warlords that was released, where it was a level 15 adventure for companion rules, and it was kind of adventure, kind of realm management. So, yeah, that's just, I'm not saying that you're not playing real D&D if you don't play with miniatures or on a hex map or anything like that. I'm just saying, the ideas of overland travel and sea travel, kind of originate there. And, it's a shame that many people have let those go in order to kind of streamline their games a little bit. And like, you can streamline your game and still have that. Is basically what I'm saying. Now, doggone it, my outline freaked out again. Okay, let me go back up. I understand everybody's concerns on what I'm saying about the wargaming rules and stuff like that, but I'm not arguing that true D&D becomes a war game, only that there are options that are missing now because of the departure from the roots a bit, So it's also my theory that the prevalence of the railroad style of games that many people complain about come about because we've replaced overland and oversea expedition style exploration with a stress on where narrative sense is the primary concern of the game, right? And look, I'm not saying not have narration either, and I'll get to that point here in a little bit. But it is my hypothesis, and again, hypothesis meaning I can be wrong, and I've acknowledged that since day one. Where if this is a cause of GM burnout, it's unclear to me. I simply think that it's a secondary means, not a primary cause. So they just released Bastion, an entire rules section for D&D 5e that goes into exactly how you would build a fortress or main headquarters. Now D&D rather than D&D is doing what you're advocating. Yeah, that's kind of my point. Like it's weird to me because I brought up Matt Colville's book because Matt Colville did the same thing and made a $30 book for Dominion play and retainers and stuff like that. And I kind of had a laugh because I was like, man, I'm in the wrong line of work because that raised a lot of money. And, hey, no big deal. However you make money is however you make money. But, point being, kind of feel like that those rules shouldn't have been missing to begin with, And it's weird because, like, you can have a 5e game and, it's not an addition thing at all. That's not, that's not what I'm advocating. I'm not advocating this edition is better than this edition, better than this edition. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying here's some mechanics that we're missing, and it's a shame that we lost them. So this next quote comes from Drunken Delver 1966. So credit to him. He says, I like to think that I'll walk the line between classic D&D philosophy and narrative-driven play. I believe that TTRPGs should be immersive and that there should be a sense of danger and tension to adventuring. I love emergent storytelling because it means less prep stress. I try to present a world of magic, mystery, and actual legitimate danger that reacts to PC's actions. I don't do the epic story campaign thing because it puts certain expectations on the DM and causes more stress regarding what the players are supposed to do. The less planned story I stress over, the easier it is to go with the flow of the game and keep the emergent story moving forward. And character deaths, even TPKs, just create more history for the game world and present new story possibilities. It's nothing to be afraid of. And, did I lose sound? Testing 1, 2, 3. Did I lose sound? I noticed Dave Hunter said that I lost sound. No sound is fine. Okay, cool. I got a little thing. Okay, I was worried there for a minute. I noticed that everybody started talking, and then when I actually looked at, because I have it also on my computer screen, I noticed that Dave said that there was no sound. I was like, oh no. Okay, I didn't lose any sound at any point, so that might be on Dave's end. Hello, Dave, by the way. Dave was here for the last stream I did, which was like a month or two ago. Okay, good deal. So it's totally an addition thing. 5e adds OSR, subtracts. It's that simple. So yeah, well, how can I'm afraid I don't understand that point. I understand like stuff like the min-maxing doesn't quite exist in OSR. And this all comes down to a matter of preference. Do you prefer the power gaming part? Then 5e is probably a game for you. Do you prefer the less power gaming aspect? Then, perhaps try a different rule set. Like I do know this guy. I do know that you don't always just run 5e and talk about all 5e games. I know that you do have things like the Marvel superhero game. I think I saw that in a post you did. I think it's been a while. D&D 5e has 35 species, and adding OSR is begging people to exclude those species. All about wanting more and more, and one wanting more and one wanting less. Yeah, but there's also a philosophy in that. Sorry, it was my headphones. Okay, you're fine, Dave. Yeah, but at the same time, I find that restricting player options actually adds to a level of creativity. It's not always about having the most options possible. You know what I mean? because it can get kind of convoluted. Um, for example, some of the best campaigns I ever played in were those that were primarily human centric. So you only get to play human, and this, and here's these classes and stuff like that. You're the one doing the restricting. That's the problem. Okay, well, is it really a problem though? It's I don't see a flaw really in restricting player options necessarily, but that's me. I'm going to talk about. I didn't think so. Uh, I'm going to. By the way, guys, if you guys want to debate, go right on ahead. I just ask respectful and keep it clean, above the belt. You know what I mean? So I'm going to respond to what Drunken Delver wrote real quick. So this has been, well, my outline went all over the place. So let me go back. There it is. Okay, this has always been my belief, and this has been the belief of my channel for a long time, that there is a balance between narrative and sandbox style. Because I run sandboxes, but that's not to say that that everything in the world is randomly generated. So the overall campaign, in a broad stroke, and as nebulous a concept as it is, and I am granting that it is a nebulous concept and that this is a broad, not really a hard defined term, the overall campaign should have a level of unpredictability. That's where I have my most fun, seeing the crazy stuff that can happen in the world. Like I've had some players that would end up making brokering deals with like traveling goblin clans, and I've had some that would get attacked by wandering halflings. That adds a level of strangeness to it and unpredictability. Okay, why are the halflings attacking? Why are the goblins willing to broker a deal with like civilized races and stuff? And I had a random encounter with a tarantula that ended up not a giant tarantula that ended up not attacking. And I'm a little bit of a nerd for that. I used to own a pet tarantula. She was a little Arizona blonde. I named her Reese Cup, and she lived her life, and that was it. And for those of you not in the know, tarantulas will not eat when they're getting ready to molt. And as they molt and they get out of that carapace, shed the old exoskeleton off, their fangs also go with them. So like their fangs will also grow and need to harden up like the rest of the exoskeleton. And so they won't eat for a long period of time. Like you definitely want to keep water nearby so that they can rehydrate themselves, because it is a very stressful time in their life cycle, because they're growing, and they, when they're done, they're weak, and they're also very soft. And this is actually why they tell you be careful with like feeder insects like crickets, because they can actually injure the tarantula, and you should never feed one a mouse ever. Like, so if you see videos like that on like YouTube and stuff like that, like if you feed them mice, you should feed them like frozen, freeze-dried mice. That's what you should feed them. But I never did feed her that. I gave her crickets and mealworms and superworms. I think I bought some superworms, but those are kind of expensive. So the pinhead crickets worked fine. Anyways, they won't eat, and therefore, okay, so they have a random encounter with a tarantula. Why is it not attacking? Well, a tarantula is not really conscious like we are. So why is it not attacking them? Well, probably because it just molted. So like they ran into, the only reason they knew it was nearby is because there was a freshly molted exoskeleton, big giant exoskeleton on the ground. And it's like, oh, we're in a bad spot. And they kind of looking around, and they got to leave the area, but they were just like, okay, that was a little scary for a minute. Nothing came of it. It's just a little bit of flavor. Be improvisational. I understand that that's a skill that's hard to develop. We've all been there. I think anybody that's run games have always been there. So don't be afraid to improv. Okay. So let me see. What else was in this outline? Uh, Seeing how players interact with the unpredictable nature of the world and seeing the unpredictability unfold before the GM's eyes, this is a really easy way to make sure that everybody has fun. Narrative adventures can fit. I'm not saying that they don't, that you can't have narration at all. That's not what I'm advocating for. It's more like give them some lore, give them a thing to do, but also leave the possibility open of failure and a consequence. You know, so like if they do this, this can happen. You know, because it only makes sense if like, okay, let's say a kid has gone missing, but you've also gotten a summons to go protect the village from like a bandit attack. Okay, well if you go after the kid, then the village is going to get raided by the bandit attack. But if you go after the bandits, the kid is probably missing and will never be found again. And for those wondering, I try not to put. I myself don't like kids dying in my games. You know, the only thing that I know to explain is I can imply it, but I don't detail it. So, like for example, like if a comet, let just for the hypothetical here, if a comet struck the village and the village blew up, it's a pretty safe assumption everyone, including the kids, died. So that, you know, just as an example. I don't know. You might not agree with me. That's just my comfort level. Okay, so what else? Did I hit on all of this? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we know about a modern phenomena known as the GM shortage, and we know about the modern phenomena because of people complaining about being burnt out all the time and that the game is too much stress. Well, it seems that the most common complaint that they have is that they think they lack time of preparation. I don't have enough time to prep between sessions because I have so much going on. Well, no, that's the problem. You're over prepping. You're putting too much stuff in that leads to you needing to have to prepare it. You should rely less on that and more on just kind of just randomness. There are tables for free online. You can do a Google search, and there are tables for how to generate just a quick little side thing, you know, for your players. You know, so if you want to have a narrative focused game, you can have that, but like put some randomness in there so that take the workload off you, or better yet, buy modules. Modules are really good for it. Module, because that's the thing too, that a lot of people think that they either have to run all modules all the time or run no modules none of the time, and that's not true. My personal experience, the best times I ever had was a mix between the two. Modules can really lighten the workload, and I used to share adventures with buddies all the time. Like if they were playing in it, I would hold it off, but you know, whenever they were done with it and they knew they were done with it, they're like, hey, can I borrow that? I want to use that for a game. So, I've let them borrow it. Some stuff not so great, but at the same time, it's all about getting together with your friends, having a fun time, playing a game, escaping the real world for a little bit, because Lord knows, real world is stressful enough. So okay, so Scott says, very much a problem when you tell people they can't choose a species. You're begging them to wonder about the horrible reasons why somebody will want to exclude specific species. Well, that all comes down to what fits in your world and what doesn't. Like okay, let's say that you want to run like a Knights of the Round Table kind of thing, and like you want to make it like as faithful to the story as possible. There's a lot of races that would not be included, but it all comes down to whatever feel of your game. So the next point. Okay, so this is Nicola Rocco, if I pronounced that right. If I haven't, I apologize. 4178 says, I do think that there is a certain desire by especially new players to have epic stories, quote, end quote, have an epic story, end quote. Not create one, not take part in one, but to be guided through one. A lot of modern D&D culture is more like a theme park where GM guides the players through set pieces, and there will be thrills, excitement, and suspense, but never danger. The players are tourists in a fantasy world, and that's what they want. For all the bemoaning of railroading, if you show these new players a sandbox, they won't know what to do, they won't know how to play, they'll think the game is boring and leave. In some sense, a scripted adventure can be useful for first-time players to show them the kinds of fun they can find, and you can ease them into a sandbox. Well, okay, so to make it clear, my fight is not to those who expect or advertise a railroad. You know, if that's what you're expecting and that's what you're advertising, go right ahead. My qualms is with those that pretend that player agency necessarily matters in a world where it really doesn't, because everything is planned out, and you know you're not getting off the rails whether you like it or not. It can be argued that players would not know whether or not their choices truly matter. That's fine, but you know, I myself personally, I like the possibility of failure. You know, I brought up the whole bandit and Badnet and halfling stuff, and the kid disappearing, and this, that, and everything. You know, just two things that I just kind of threw out in the air just as hypotheticals. So you know, it kind of comes down to like fudging dice rolls, right? Like I don't fudge, I never do, and I'm not. I whether you do or not, that's up to you. Far be it for me to tell you how to do that, but I don't do it. I've never done it. I'm never going to do it because I'm kind of afraid if I start doing that, well, then I'll do it all the time. You know, I just, you know, but you know, my players enjoy that sense of danger and that sense of the possibility of failure. But I agree 100% with an approach of starting with a railroad and easing into something like a sandbox. So I do agree with that. You know, some players, you know, this is a strange new game. You know, what in the world do I do? On the flip side, I've had players that have started in sandboxes and they have figured it out. But, you know, think about it this way. B1 and B2 kind of railroad the players to the titular locations, right? So if you're playing B1, it takes you straight to the dungeon there. If you're playing B2, it takes you straight to the keep on the Borderlands there, right? It just kind of fast forwards you into it because those are meant to be introductory modules. So they railroad you to that, but after that, it's all on the PCs on what they want to do. But at the same time, you know, if you have people that don't know how to play, this all comes down to communication. Communication is key to making sure your game is going to survive. I've had many first-time players in their 30s and 40s that never played a single game in their life. I've stuck them into town, just told them to feel their way around, do what they feel like they want to do, what their characters would do, you know. And they would ask some meta questions like, what can I do? What can I do this? You know, but you know, I'd give them meta answers. And here's the thing. There's good metagaming and bad metagaming. And my belief is that a referee should never avoid or prevent questions from being asked out of character, especially for new players. Because, you know, I've been there, done that, where you only have like one rule book to go around, right? So you only have one rule book to go around, and you have like 5 players, but they all want to know what they want to do, and they're all new, this, that, and everything. Well, you are the rules. So there's your responsibility as a game master. You know, there's good metagaming and bad metagaming. You know, so you don't have to be such a dictator and maintain that everybody has to stay in character all the time. You know, be willing to talk to your players. Be willing to answer questions. You have to. That's the responsibility you take upon yourself. If there's problems with the game and you're the GM, you are the arbiter. You're the final judge. You're everything to the game, right? So like if there's a problem with the game, it's your job to fix it because the players are only suffering the consequences or reaping the benefits. Or in some cases, they're really reaping the benefits, like that guy that allowed that dude to create a rich character and it broke the economy, and everybody else had to suffer while this guy was able to afford like $200-$300 short swords. And the rest of them were struggling at level 1. You know, things have consequences. So, you know, fix the game. You know, you are in that position and in that position of powers. A position of power to fix the issue. Okay. Very wrong. High prep is needed. People who say it isn't are not prepping a lot because they have literally prepped for a year. How low prep is prescribed by people who are hiding prep, they already did. I think I heard you say player agency does not matter. You are on the wrong team. OSR put some wild ideas in people's heads. Can't believe you said that. What? Okay, so let me clarify some things. Okay, so what I said is that if you railroad your players, but you have like a certain outcome that's going to happen no matter what they do, player agency truly doesn't matter, and that's what I'm against. Now, if you're advertising for that, that's fine. You know, the whole tour guided time of the whole tour guided thing of guiding your players through the game, and like they're expecting a railroad, they're expecting kind of like a trip to Disneyland. That's fine. If you've advertised it and they expect that, you know, that's fine. I don't care, you know, because it's not my game. But if like it's when you say their choices matter and they really don't. Now, granted, they would never know unless they checked your notes, but I'm kind of one of those guys. You know, it's just not. Okay, don't worry about clarifying for Scott. He is only here to cause you grief. It's best to ignore him. He wants to fluster and derail you. No. I've trust me, this ain't my first rodeo. As long as he's not calling anybody racist, I really don't care. Like he's because we had one dude who came in and just started calling everybody alt-right people, which was not the case at all. And for whatever reason, like race and nothing came up. So like I'm not. He can say whatever he wants. I really don't care. Just as long as like you're not like personally attacking other people. I don't care. So high prep being needed. Okay. I'm not saying that there is not a level of preparation needed. You know, because when you have low prep, it can definitely show. So yeah, Scott's fair to voice his beliefs and opinions. You know, I'm very, you know, relaxed on that kind of stuff. You know, just don't dox, don't attack people. I'm fine. But you know, you don't have to over prep things. Like the stress of the whole idea of GM burnout really comes about from this over preparation and people thinking that you have to prepare every blade of grass in your world, and you don't need to do that at all. And it's something that I think that people need to be reminded of. So, alrighty. So I believe that's all I've got for tonight. I'm going to get ready to close this out. So again, my next video that I plan on focusing on is on the dice bell curve. I know that sounds very mundane. I know that sounds absolutely dreadfully boring. Some basics have been a little prep, right? I've run games like that, like just take a table and. So I suffer more from a lack of maps. If I have maps, I'm okay. That's something that I've not been able to, even on, because for whatever reason, I can't do it with a random table necessarily. Just for whatever reason, my brain doesn't click with it right. That's a me problem though. So like for whatever reason, because like I said, I've got the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, and it's got the table in the back. I'm just really bad at rolling one up, and because I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it doesn't have to make sense. But I'm working with a theme here. You know, it's it's a me thing. So my next video, because I really want to move on to the next topic for the next time, is on the dice bell curves and that how important it is for game masters to know, right? And I was going to go into it, but I want you to watch the video, so I'm going to chill with that. So I want to say thank you for the views and subs. For those of you just joining and you didn't know this, this past week, I got a 700% increase in views, which is very out of the ordinary for me. I had an increase of 34% of subscribers, so thank you guys for that. I do have to thank Scott for it too, because anytime like interaction gets put into the algorithm, that's what bumps it up, right? So the I'm not a drama guy, okay? And let me get some context about the whole social media video thing. So like I had gone over that over and over and over again to try not to be ranty and to try to be fair and try to be empirical about it. There's some things that you can't really necessarily be empirical about. It just kind of, at the end of the day, boils down to my taste. But some people have also asked me real quick, because I do have this in my ending section on my outline. Some people are asking when I'm going to talk about Basic Fantasy again, in particular. I will. I haven't given up on that, even though my channel has more been focused on like BECME more than anything now. Never forget where you came from, and that's where I started in terms of DMing. I started playing with 5e, but I started becoming a dungeon master with Basic Fantasy, and I made a lot of stuff with it. And I still plan on, because I've said it for over a year, I still plan on releasing the Mansion of the Forsaken Necromancer on Basic Fantasy's forum, for people to play, for free. Because people really love the idea of it, and my players really loved playing it when I ran that group through it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, these are your games. You can do whatever you want with them. You don't have to take a lick bit of my advice, or you didn't even have to listen to a thing I said. BECME is cool. I dungeon master mostly BX now, right? So, like, I started with Basic Fantasy. I've got the Moldvay PDF, and I've got a You Are a Drama Guy, you just don't know it yet. Maybe. Probably a Jekyll and Hyde moment. Shoot, what was that? There was some. We used to have a saying in the Dark Souls community. You either die you either die a sorcerer, or you live long enough to see yourself become a knight. So who knows, whatever. But I try to put out videos basically talk about mechanics and stuff, because mechanics is really my thing. Well, I'm a factory mechanic, but that kind of stuff enthralls me. That's why I wanted to talk about the dice bell curve. But I started getting into like the rule cyclopedia stuff, and I started getting stuff for that, like getting the rule book for that and all that. And I dipped my toes into OD&D as well. Since Scott is still here too, I don't know if he was here for this first part. I know that, and I want to make this clear to everybody too. I was aware that you made a response video, and I was going to watch it, but it was the 75th Daniel Boone Festival for our county, so I took the girls and the wife to go see it, and I was like, I'll watch it later this evening. I got home about 9, 10 o'clock, and I was like, I'm too tired. I'll watch it tomorrow. And it was gone. And I want to make it clear to everybody, just like I don't deal with conjecture or ad hominem, I don't also deal with conjecture on my part, and I don't really deal with hearsay. Whatever reason Scott had for removing that video, his reasons. So whatever was said in that video, null and void. Don't really know what was said. It has to come from Scott's mouth himself. But just to let Scott know, hey, no ill will towards you. No, thank you for joining, by the way. So Again, no ill will, no harboring bad feelings or nothing like that. Also agreed about your post about RFK Jr. this morning on Twitter. So, but other than that, guys, I'm going to get off. I've taken enough of your time. Hour 15 minutes seems like a good stream. No ill will to you. That's right. God bless, bub. And speaking of which, longtime viewers of my channel will know this next line. Those of you that are newer, take care. God bless. And I'll see you on the other side. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.